Okay, we're live on YouTube. I'm going to make the webinar live on Zoom. Okay, Grant, take it away.
All right, thanks, Jason, and good afternoon, and welcome back to our NAADD members who attended our first session 2 weeks ago on diversity. This is part number 2. Again, just a huge thank you for making this a part of your day today and your dedicated support to our NAADD community. Again, my name is Grant Kelly. I'm the Senior Associate Director of Athletics at Johns Hopkins University. I want to thank our NAADD Digital Committee members for putting together this series. And I again want to sincerely thank the 14 members of our NAADD Diversity Working Group for their insight and guidance through this process. The NAADD organization believes and stands by equal opportunity for all, and educating our membership base while being allies is again our #1 priority. So today, leading and moderating our session today is Bryan Blair. Bryan is in his 3rd year at Washington State and first as the Deputy Director of Athletics. In his role, Bryan, directs the sport administrator group responsible for day-to-day administration of WSU's 17 varsity sports, while specifically serving as the sport administrator for football, swimming, tennis, cross country, and track and field. As a sport administrator, Bryan oversees all aspects of each program, including personnel, budgeting, capital projects, fundraising, student athlete welfare, and overall program evaluation. In addition to his sport oversight, Bryan supervises several departmental units, including student athlete development, strength and conditioning, equipment services, and performance nutrition. He also manages the Cougars' relationship with Nike, serves as the Chief Diversity Officer while leading the department's diversity and inclusion initiatives, and is charged with development and execution of WSU's athletic strategic plan. Bryan's work has been recognized on the national level as well, being selected to the National Sports Forum Steering Committee, along with the 2021 Board of Directors for the Minority Opportunities Athletic Association. Wow. Bryan, good luck today. That's quite a track record. You've done amazing work in the industry, so thank you. To everyone joining us today, just a reminder to please submit your questions in the Q&A section, and our panelists will do our very best to answer them all. So Bryan, thanks again, and take it away.
Wow, Grant, I appreciate that lengthy introduction. You make me sound important. Sounds like I earn my money, so I greatly appreciate you trumping me up a little bit. Welcome to the audience. I'm really excited to be here today. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. I'm a firm believer growth and comfort can't coexist. And today's conversation, it may be tough, but it's necessary for us all to move forward, for all to listen, to learn, educate ourselves. So we want to get rolling. And I thought about a way of getting rolling other than the normal, tell me about yourself. So I believe your why and your core values are more important during adversity than ever before. And I think we all can agree we've faced a lot of adversity these last couple of months. So I want each of our panelists, and we'll start with Alvin, to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, but also tell us your why. What's your purpose? What gets you excited about working in college athletics? So Alvin, take it over.
Thanks, Bryan. Thanks, man. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Alvin Franklin. I serve as Director of Development for Major Gifts here at Purdue University. Born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. Played baseball at Jackson State University. Go Tigers. I've had positions in athletic development at Mississippi State, University of Alabama, Birmingham, and also University of South Alabama. I've also had a short coaching stint in baseball at Hines Community College. My why, honestly, my why reverts back to my experience as a student athlete and me wanting a better experience. Every day I want to do basically all I can to make sure student athletes have the resources to have a great experience. I also want those coming behind me, especially minorities, to believe that they can have success in this realm of college athletics. My purpose every day, I'm a big energy guy. So bringing energy and positivity to the workplace to make others around me better.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alvin. Lauren, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Lauren Robinson, Director of Donor Relations and Stewardship at UConn. I've been there for about 2.5 years, originally from Detroit, Michigan. My why is I absolutely love what I do and the team that I work with. The opportunity to show appreciation to those that donate their money to something that they believe in, while also giving student athletes a chance to thrive and prosper is really just why I love waking up every day doing what I do.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Lauren. Dee, take it away.
My name is DeAna Tyler, or Dee. As Bryan mentioned, I am the Director of Athletic Development here at Lamar University. I grew up in Georgia and I attended the University of West Georgia. I worked in development at Duke University before being at Lamar, and here I am now running the fundraising department. My why is sort of split into two reasons. The first one is that I used to cheer for the University of West Georgia, and we were the only championship winning team, but we did not receive scholarships. We did not have that funding. And to me, it was crazy that we had rings and we weren't being supported in that way. So it made me realize the importance of getting donors involved and having those funds. And then my second reason is as I continue to grow, more people reach out to me to ask me about my experience and to ask me to help them or mentor them, or they tell me, you know, I've never seen a Black woman with a director role at a primarily white institution. So as we continue to have those conversations, I want to continue to open doors for those that come after me.
Thanks for that. Kev, bring us home, man.
Definitely. Humble to be a part of this group today. My name is Kevin Wilson, and I'm also fortunate to work alongside Bryan every day at Washington State University as the assistant AD for Major Gifts. And so I'm a former football student athlete at Duke University. Unfortunately, did not cross paths with Dee during my time there. It was a little bit before her. And I'm also a proud HBCU graduate from North Carolina Central University, where I got my master's, and also where my journey in athletics began, working under Dr. Ingrid McCree. And I'm currently pursuing my doctorate at the University of Florida. And, fortunate to have notched over a decade in athletics, recently coming here from the University of Central Florida and having worked at two HBCUs at Fayetteville State and also North Carolina Central University. And so just learned a lot. And essentially my why is just helping deserving student athletes realize scholarship through sport. The bill at Duke when I was there was about $40,000 a year. And I know if it wasn't for the family that gave it to me, I wouldn't have been there. And so nothing brings me more joy than, well after our student athletes are done, when you cross paths with them, may it be in their professional lives or their personal lives, and hearing them say that, attending the institution that you worked was the best decision that they ever made. It's just a testament to the tireless work that we do as development professionals and to the experience that we help create. So that's my why.
Absolutely. And I thank you all for sharing that introduction and your why with the group. I think I accepted this opportunity to be moderator. We hopped on some of the prep calls, and that's when I really got excited about today's conversation, hearing your stories, hearing and learning, meeting some of you for the first time, and all of us expressing a gratitude for being in college athletics, but also wanting better. Want better for our institutions, better for this nation in many ways. So let's dive into today's discussion. One of the things when we first started looking at topics, I dove into the NCAA demographics database and just looked for numbers. And they've got a category for development and fundraising professionals. And it showed that 9% of fundraising professionals are Black or African American, with 2% of that 9% being Black females in the industry. So I think that provides you a little bit of background on the makeup of our employees. And I know our last webinar touched heavily upon that. But I'd ask our panelists, anecdotally, I don't have that same data for our donor bases. So as you think about your role and who you interact with, aside from your student athlete alumni, what does your donor base look like at your institution? And we'll start, let's start with Alvin.
The makeup of our donor base is just schools, mostly white men over the age of 45. And also I would say, man, in my time at Purdue, I've been here a little over a year, and I've only had 2 donor meetings with African Americans, and both of those were former student athletes.
Absolutely.
I would say I don't have the numbers for our donor bases. We don't necessarily record that information. However, I do notice that when I'm hosting events or at a game, oftentimes I'm the only woman or even person of color, Black person in the room or the stadium.
Absolutely. D, Kevin, anything to add there?
I echo their sentiments. The majority of our donor base are older white males. And now I can positively say that some of our alum are starting to get back involved, and some people in the community are starting to get back involved. So the number of African Americans that I work with, that is increasing, but the majority of them, of our donor base who give consistently, are older white males.
Yeah, and for me, unfortunately, I can count on my one hand how many donor experiences that I've managed, specifically for Black donors or Black couples. But I don't think it's due to a lack of wealth. I think for decades, athletics has kind of served as just an avenue for us, as uplift, as opposed to a pastime, right? When, back home in Riverdale, Georgia, most Black kids don't really have parents that were season ticket holders for 30 plus years at a Georgia Tech or University of Georgia. If you ask a Black prospective student athlete in Georgia, I promise you, like, their first experience on the campus is going to be as a camper, trying to get a scholarship versus at a game as just a legitimate fan. And so it's especially made me value my fundraising experience at HBCUs. Their experience, at the university really kind of transcended their ability to just shoot, tackle, and run. So they had a utility to the university outside of just being a student athlete. So I was able to engage, non-Black student athletes, alum as donors in that regard. So I think it's a little bit, unique and fortunate in what I've experienced.
I appreciate that, Kevin, because I think you bring up a great point. I mean, growing up, all I knew from the age of 1 till probably closer to 14, 15 was HBCU football, because both my parents were HBCU grads, and that's the only football we attended. That's the only football we really watched on TV. And it wasn't until later, as I started playing high school football and looking at colleges and those kind of things, that got exposed to a lot of other football programs, including the one I'm working at now, Washington State. And I think I wanted to ask that question to start us off, not because I think it's a mystery to anybody in the industry, but to set the stage that what we talked about, I think in this last NAADD session, was very much what it looks like to be an African-American in the industry, one of a few. And then we set the stage on the opposite side and talking about the donor space, where virtually none of your donors really look like you. So it creates an interesting interaction when you think about navigating that space for professionals such as yourself, and asking those people for support and stewarding their university. I think let's talk a little bit about the challenges you faced. I think in the prep for this panel, we talked a lot and shared a lot of stories. So I'd ask each of you if you could share, I know we talked a lot, but maybe share just one story briefly with the audience of a challenge you faced navigating the donor space.
I would say recently, after the murder of George Floyd, our team social media pages, they posted support for Black Lives Matter. And silly me, I went and I read the comments under the post and the photos just to see kind of what the reactions would be from the fans. And they were absolutely disgusting. I saw everything from shut up and dribble to we're not here to see their political beliefs, people threatening to cancel their tickets and so on. So it was also as upsetting because these are people I've shared space with, either at an event or at a game. And so just to know that I've probably been next to at least one or two of them and they think like this, and to just think that that's okay to think and feel like that these students are here for your entertainment, but they're not worthy of equal and fair treatment. It was just sad and disheartening.
Quick and easy story that I can immediately pull is when I first started in my current role. I had my first donor event. I was very excited to meet everyone that was going to be there. And as I was getting to know everyone, someone walked up to me and they said straightforward, "Do you know that you only received this job because you are Black and you are a woman?" And it took me a minute to accept what they just said to me. And I said, "So you don't think that I'm qualified? It's not my degrees, it's not my experience. It's just because I'm Black and I'm a woman." And he said, "Yes, your boss needed to meet a quota and you filled that quota." And I said, "You know what? Thank you for your time. You have a great day." And I left it.
So for me, it was more of a one-on-one instance. I won't say his name. It was a gentleman. I just use initials. CJ. He was a great guy, big time contractor. Really supported our men's basketball program at the time. Our head coach was Black. And he was a huge advocate of our men's basketball coach. He was even involved in the process, helped stepped up to get him hired. So we were really excited to have him on board. And so the next step was trying to move the needle in terms of trying to get charter flights for our program. Thought it would make a real big difference for our men's and women's programs. And so I set the visit up. And so as a contractor, you got to go out for bid. And he had recently just lost out on a multi-million-dollar bid. And for him, it wasn't the fact that he lost on the multi-million-dollar bid. It was the fact that he lost the multi-million-dollar bid to a minority contractor. And so he felt the need to kind of ask me, my opinion on the policy, basically saying that, they need to give a certain percentage to minority owners. And he'd been in the business so long, and he just doesn't understand why they give Black people hands up. And I was like, kind of taken back. I was like, hey, man, like, I have nothing to do with the policy. I definitely think it was a really awkward conversation for me. But at the end of the day, I just said, I reminded him that, hey, at some point, somebody gave you a shot, as an early contractor. And so that's no different. And so, I wasn't there I told him also I wasn't there to represent, my entire race or all the Black contractors in the world in that particular regard. So, let's pay attention to the matter at hand, which is helping our student athletes, just try to redirect the conversation. I did share my opinion with him though on it, and my boss had my back where I was working at the time, and so we kind of refocused and just kind of moved on from there. But it was just amazing how he would kind of look at me and say, kind of to Dee's point, you're getting this leg up just because you're Black, and just really kind of saying, sharing his thoughts. So it kind of took me back a little bit.
Appreciate it, Kevin. I think you and Dee both hit on a key point there of people just assuming you're in your role because of some affirmative action policy or other leg up, and not that you earned it or you're just as qualified. And that assumption, or even the threat of that assumption sometimes threatens our confidence and our ability to be successful. Alvin, you got one for us?
Yeah, I want to bring up an experience I've had, because I know that this topic is racism racism in the donor space. But the story I would like to share is actually where I experienced basically racism in the donor and workplace at the same time. At a previous institution, I had a soccer coach approach me about wanting to get some additional resources for his program. And so, just like anybody else, we started kind of prospecting for what he needed. And he mentioned there was a parent of one of his players that could basically get this done just by himself. And so I said, okay, I was pretty new to the university at the time, and got the parent's phone number, reached out to the parent. And when I got on the phone with the parent initially was a white parent. Initially was cold-hearted, was rude. And I could tell, he was kind of occupied, but I didn't know what he was doing. But he started asking me questions, and I could tell he was asking questions from my bio, from our staff director. And it led to him asking, out of all the people we could have hired, why did we choose to hire you? And I was kind of turned off from that comment, but the conversation basically came to an end. And before I could even share it with anybody on staff, that parent had reached out to an individual that he knew on our staff, and basically told that individual, I don't want him, it said that boy, that's what he said, that boy, reaching out to me ever again. But what bothered me was my coworker thought it was funny, which it wasn't. And immediately, I knew, okay, I really can't mess with this guy's character. I can't really associate myself with this guy. And no one really took what I was bringing to the table really serious. They were, no, you don't look, you're looking at it wrong, you're looking at it wrong. But that same coworker's wife, when I vacated that position and took a new role at another university, that coworker's wife made the comment to my supervisor to not hire another Black man in that role. And so, that's just my tidbit of experience. Unfortunately, I've experienced more, But I think that one was very important to share just because it racism in both the donor space and the workplace.
So, I appreciate you all sharing these experiences because I also know how traumatizing reliving them as you tell them can be. I think in these last couple of months, we've been asked a lot of what is it like to be you? Share an example so I can understand it, those kind of questions. And I feel like every time I do that, I relive that situation that in many ways I try to bury in my memory and never remember again. So Alvin, for you to bring that up along with all of you and sharing those painful experiences, I greatly appreciate it. I don't take it lighthearted. And there's no excuse for anybody to make a joke out of being called boy. Like growing somebody who grew up in the South, I understand what that means, and I don't need it in context. That should never be acceptable for anybody, and I hope everybody listening understands how seriously we should all take that. I want to, and we'll dive into allyship a little bit later, but real quick, I want to touch on something because I think a lot of times when you see young African Americans in the development field, oftentimes they get assigned to former student athletes or the Letterman's Club or those type of experiences, just knowing the makeup of some of your wealthier student athlete donors and kind of how that can fit. And I don't necessarily know that that's a bad thing or a good thing. I just know that it's something that happens. So I'd love to get feedback from the group on how are those interactions different? How do you feel like you benefit from operating in that space? What are the pluses and minuses? I think I'll point this one directly to Alvin and Kevin as two of our former Division I student athletes. Kevin, you want to lead us off since Alvin just spoke?
Yes. Honestly, hats off to Danny White, for doing everything in his power when I was UCF to kind of realizing that pattern. He did not want to put me, he did not want to pigeonhole me to be the varsity night guy. But we all looking for responsibilities and opportunities. So for me, I didn't see it as a negative. So leadership here at Washington State was the same. It was no different. They want to put me in a position to be successful. And so I never saw it as kind of being pigeonholed, and so I don't think anybody understands the grind of a basketball season, right? And like a basketball player, nobody understands preseason summer camp like a football player. So our departments we're supposed to build connections. And so when they put us in those roles, I don't think it's necessarily a pigeonholing piece. I think it's more so just doing what leadership is supposed to do, which is, put the right person in the seat to build that connection. So I never kind of felt like, I was just being pigeonholed, even though, leadership tried like heck to kind of make sure that I was respected as a development officer and not just a varsity nice guy, even though there's some great people who are in that role throughout the country that are doing it well. I think there's also an association that supports, for the former letter winners, and there should. But in terms of just, being in that role for me, is something I've embraced, and it's something that's set me apart from the countless individuals that are trying to do what we do on a day-to-day basis. But I make sure that I incorporate strategy. I don't just kick it with the cool kids, so to speak, or the guy that just got drafted. I actively engage and cultivate our student athletes so we can make sure they have a strong connection, ability, and interest to support the institution. And I always tell my former student athletes at the time that nobody should care about your degree or your experience more than you do. It's based on your involvement, right? Post graduation, the value can either increase or decrease. It's really up to you. And so, I've just kind of seized it as an opportunity to make sure that they do the right thing in their role, and just really embraced it.
Alvin?
I can echo a lot to what Kevin just said, but it has been something I've been faced with both voluntarily and involuntarily. The interactions are very different to me. In most cases, the call to action is from football and basketball alums who are majority Black. Their trust, for the most part, has been broken. And, you spend the majority of your time when you step into that role and you meet them for the first time, changing their mindsets to understand that, what they may have gone through, it's changed. The leadership is new, and how important it is to getting them back involved and them coming back, really impacts student athletes currently on campus. To me, it's a benefit if the fundraiser is open and honest with those former student athletes and willing to discuss how and why things within the department that are negative need to change. You know, I've had success in that role with former student athletes, you know, with building that bond and building that trust, kind of what Kevin was kind of alluding to, and making them feel that as if, you know, now their life after whatever university we're at, you know, it's just as important as when they were running, shooting, you know, scoring touchdowns, whatever.
Absolutely. And I think you hit on there. And one, for the audience, I'd encourage you all to use the Q&A feature. We got some stacking up right now that are coming in. So please feel free to chime in the Q&A. But one of the questions we got is, do you have a sense of experience of Black athletes, current and former, on your campus? And how does this impact their willingness to give back? So I think you touched on it, right? I mean, sometimes those experiences aren't overwhelmingly positive. Sometimes you have a lot of coaching staff changeover or other things that maybe separate some of the connection they have, depending on how long they were a student athlete. And your job as a fundraiser is to reestablish that connection and strengthen it and paint a picture of why your need can help fix maybe the experience that they had, negative or otherwise, at the institution. So I really appreciate that dialogue. Switching gears, I think a lot of the conversation we had in prep for this conversation was talking about fit and authenticity and being yourself, but also navigating some of these spaces. So I think I'd love for our two ladies on the call to really talk a little bit about being who you think people want to see versus being yourself and being authentic in those spaces, and maybe some of the challenges you've experienced. Lauren, you want to lead us off?
Sure. I honestly do a lot of code switching, or as my husband likes to say, using my work voice, where it can be a little softer. I have to actively, think about what I want to say, maybe the impact of how that's perceived. I don't want to be too assertive because I don't want to be perceived as a witch or the angry Black woman. I know sometimes I do have a resting face that may show that I'm, not interested or upset about something. It's not, it's literally just how my face looks. So I do try to keep it so that, again, I'm not perceived as threatening or that angry Black woman persona.
So, D?
Ooh, when I used to change myself, or as she say, code switch, I used to have a little bit of anxiety about making sure that everything was in the perfect place. So make sure I have straight hair, make sure I don't have on jewelry, and if I do, it's just little pieces. Make sure I have on a dress instead of pants. Make sure it's not too tight, it's not too loose. Make sure you have on heels because that's what a lady wears. Don't have on flat shoes. No bright colors because you don't want to call too much attention to yourself. So then I think about, I have to make all of these changes to myself to be accepted. And then I think about who I really am. And I love my natural curly hair. And I wear pieces of jewelry that have sentimental value to me. And I actually rather be in pants because I don't have to be as restrictive with everything that I do. And heels hurt my feet after a couple of hours. So I'd rather have on my flats, but it's just changes and little things that you constantly think about to make sure that you are seen as someone that can do the job that you've been hired to do by other people.
Absolutely. And I think, I think you both did a great job of giving examples of the mental gymnastics you go through to make yourself presentable to whatever situation you're walking into. And I'm not sure everybody has to go through that same kind of setup, right? I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about people just assuming you got that position because you're a Black female, or Alvin because you're a Black male and you're affirmative action hired. So you factor that in when you go into these interactions, as if there's an increased pressure on you to go above and beyond because you don't want to prove that stereotype or that belief right, or you feel like you've got to dress a certain way or not come off as the angry Black person or not be too loud or not be whatever it is. You're going through that in addition to all the other things you have to do to form that connection with the possible prospect, secure the gift, those kind of things. So I think I just want everybody in the audience to understand these examples. I don't want this to just be examples that you just take for example's sake. I mean, these are things on top of doing the job well that you have to do on top of that to get to the same level as maybe some of your counterparts. And I think those are really important for us all to think through what we have to go through there. Kevin, I mean, you're from Georgia. Obviously you work here in Eastern Washington with me, very much a land grant farming community. Alvin, You grew up in the South in Mississippi, and now you're in Indiana at Purdue University, so drastically different than where you kind of grew up and experienced a lot of life. Kind of talk a little bit about how you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Kevin, I know you and I have conversations about combines and everything in the wheat industry. Alvin, I'm assuming you've had to get used to some new experiences, or even it could be as simple as some of the locations we meet donors or prospects at that really you're the only person there, and may have been the only person there all week that looks like you. So how do you navigate those spaces?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And it was a shock to my system. And I think it was, to be honest, it was an adjustment that I had to be willing to make when I interviewed. And that we all had to be willing to make when we interview, wherever you go to in the country. At first, you focus on being, on a Power 6 stage, being able to compete. People know where your school is, and they're telling you about the rich history and traditions about your of your institution. You're really focused and excited about that, right? When you go to a place where you normally are not, but then it starts to settle in that your favorite restaurants that you grew up going to are nowhere to be found. You don't do the businesses that you used to go into, and especially it hits home when your spouse can't go and do the things that she wants to do or eat where she wants to eat. But what really hit home for us is when your family is 2,000 plus miles away, and so I can't emphasize more the importance of African Americans just having family around us at all times. Like, we need a network. We need people around us for our good times and our bad. And when you go into spaces when you're the only one, it's an isolating feeling. Regardless of the smile that you wear on your face every day, you can really feel like you're the only one dealing with something. Fortunately, Bryan, I've had you to come and vent about some things that other people just don't even see, right? And you don't feel like explaining yourself to your non-Black colleagues all the time. And so, the way I've kind of coped with it is just trying to embrace my coworkers as my extended family and hope that they genuinely do the same to me. I've also, had to open myself up to opportunities. Now, I don't know how many people follow Bryan on social media, but this guy is Mr. Outdoors. I am not Mr. Outdoors. I like to be in my house. I'm a homebody, but I tried to be intentional about getting out on the Palouse, taking my 4-year-old son out every day. We just had a newborn, born 2 weeks ago. So getting knocks out and getting out with my wife. And so just being intentional about embracing what's around you is really key and important about going to a new area. And in terms of just from a donor standpoint, that's one of the parts that I love about my job. And had it not been for athletics, I probably wouldn't have been exposed to 80% of the people or 80% of the places that I've been exposed to. And so even though my family is international and my mom has, taken me back home to DeAna, but essentially connecting with donors really helps expose. Like I've gone shooting before. I've never shot a gun in my life, but a donor wanted to go to the shooting range. And so we went to help build that connection and do different things. So it's not just golfing. It's not just, sitting on those large combines during harvesting season. It's something different. And you just got to embrace it. And really kind of be excited about it. So that's kind of what I've done to kind of adjust over time.
I appreciate that positivity there too, because I try to look at it the same way. I mean, I remember we were at a donor event in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, together. We were standing on the golf course, and here's a guy from Georgia and a guy from South Carolina in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, looking at a golf course that overlooks the water and the mountains, and just kind of reflecting on kind of what led us to this point. So I definitely appreciate the ride as well. Alvin, what you got for us?
Man, especially as a Black fundraiser at a PWI, we don't have the advantage that white fundraisers have with being relatable right off the bat with your portfolio and the donors that support your athletic department. For me, the whole comfortable with being uncomfortable, I've been blessed with the strength to be able to adapt to different environments very fast. I went to all Black elementary school, all Black middle school, all Black high school, and then I played at HBCU. But then when you turn to the next chapter of my life throughout my professional career, I've been in environments for the vast majority of the time where I'm the only Black person or one of few Black people in the room or on staff. So I have gotten comfortable with that quote unquote uncomfortable, really about owning my background and being very proud of who I am and where I'm from. And I think that also makes the people around you more comfortable, that, I'm proud, you display that you're proud of who you are and where you've come from. I didn't grow up in the country club environment, but I don't make it seem if I did either. But what I do is I engage with my donors, ask a lot of questions, kind of similar to what Kev just hit on. So I can engage in conversations about farming, manufacturing, other subjects, regarding their everyday normal, environment. So I can be more well-versed. So I like the term embrace that Kevin used, because, it's really just embracing the environment around you and making those connections with the donors and also coworkers.
I appreciate both of you all from that viewpoint. And I think, Alvin, to your point and Kevin's point, embrace is a key word there. You're not going to flip the what our donor base is like anytime soon. It's the nature of things. So you can either get comfortable and embrace what you're experiencing, look for the highs, like Kevin talked about, exposing yourself, but also, Alvin, to your point, being confident in who you are and knowing how your diversity adds to the equation. And when people sense real, they're attracted to real, I think. I think when you can be yourself, truth be told, I think people embrace you that much more. And being authentic is a big piece of that. I think I want to switch gears a little bit and just talk about allyship. And really my hope is, we talked a lot about our experiences, and hopefully that opens some eyes to what you four face on a regular basis. And now switching gears to how can your coworkers, how can your supervisors, how can others support you as you navigate this industry? We started out talking about the statistics of the industry and who makes it up, and also looking at our donor bases and who makes that up. As you navigate this space, how can your or really people of color or not people of color, your coworkers assist you in navigating these spaces? What are some of the tips, tricks, or examples that your coworkers have done that have made it easier for you to navigate this space successfully? So Lauren, you want to lead us off, and then we'll go back to Alvin.
Yeah. So for me, silence is louder than any comment that could be made. So if, a coworker sees something, or, or if I go and make my boss aware of a situation and nothing is done, then that speaks volumes, not only to what you think of me, but what you think of the comment or the situation. That being said, I also think it's important that your colleagues and coworkers, that they become involved with DNI initiatives. I've said to my team, I get it's an uncomfortable topic. However, it's probably more uncomfortable for me to have to live it on a daily basis. And so I just appreciate their support and, engaging with the DNI initiatives that UConn Athletics has set into place recently.
Absolutely. Alvin?
Honestly, I'm really excited to answer the question, because people in my network know that I brag a lot on my supervisor, Tim House, and how great I feel that he is. He raised a lot of money. I learned a lot from him. Cool. But I brag on him because he gets that my experience on a day-to-day basis is different from my white coworkers. And the assistance, for me, the assistance that Black fundraisers need the most is for supervisors and coworkers to acknowledge that our experience is different. And it's just the reality of the beast. When it comes to the donor visits, in my opinion, older white donors respond well to a joint visit with the when a white fundraiser is present, when they are meeting a Black fundraiser for the first time. That it is what it is. Most white donors, especially the older they are, a lot of them have never sat down and had lunch or had breakfast or coffee with someone of another race, one-on-one. So it does make them feel more comfortable. We kind of talked in our prep about my whole name tag theory. I don't wear name tags to donor events or the staff name tags. And the reason I don't is because, I first got into the industry, me wearing a name tag, people thought, I was a younger guy, they thought, hey, you were, first I thought, they just surprised that I'm young. They just surprised that I'm young. But the more and more, more events I went to, it was like I'm the elephant in the room not because I'm young, because I'm Black. You know, it is what it is. And so I stopped wearing the staff name tags because it makes me fit in with the donors. And so immediately a donor, you know, right off the bat may feel like I'm just like them. I give a lot of money, and that's the reason I'm at this event as well, especially when I'm new to a school. You know, I like the fact that they think I got money like them too.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty cool. But, you know, in reality, you know, it makes them feel more comfortable as well. And, you know, I think it goes a long way when our supervisors do engage with us, especially in intimate settings. Don't leave us out to dry. You know, that, you know, in a suite or when it comes to donor travel, you know, it kind of breaks the ice and it makes conversation a lot easier when it comes to us interacting with our white donors.
Something you both hit on that I think is really important. Well, two things, right? I think that solo versus tandem visit and what role your colleague plays in that. I think navigating that or being creative about those approaches can be helpful. Lauren, I appreciate you. That silence is an issue. That's a problem. If you don't speak up and say something, you just act like you didn't see it or turn the other cheek, like that's not okay. We at least got to address the elephant in the room, even if it's just between the two coworkers. Like at some point, you got to have that conversation and figure out how to proceed. Otherwise, that's just going to constantly be there and we're never going to get over it. I think one thing we talked about in our prep too, that I want to hit on for the audience is the value of that public acknowledgement. And I think our AD here at Washington State, Pat Chun, is really, really good at this. When myself or Kevin or some others, and I think he does this for a lot of us, but it means something different to me, I think. When I'm at dinner before on the Friday night with our donor group for a football game or I'm in the suite, he goes out of his way to introduce me and say, hey, so-and-so, this is Bryan Blair. He's one of my deputy ADs. He does X, Y, and Z. And then we can take the conversation from there. But him acknowledging me in that space and not just to let me exist on my own eases that conversation or that entry point to have some of those conversations. And I think that was a common theme as we talked as a group to prep for this. There's value there. And so that's on your colleagues, that's on your supervisors. When they have the opportunity to make that introduction, that segue, whether it be a tandem visit or just in a larger gathering space, going above and beyond for some of your colleagues can be extremely helpful. Dee, I want to come to you next. And really, I want to focus, because I think this is really important. I think we'll talk a lot about the experiences of African-Americans in this industry. But I really want to talk about being a Black female in this industry and some of the challenges you face. But also, what are some of the things your colleagues or supervisors have done to make you feel more comfortable or more successful in these spaces?
Yes, our challenges are slightly a little different when it comes to fundraising. We do, as Lauren said previously, have to make sure what we say isn't too harsh and isn't too passionate, because then we're too angry or we're emotional. On top of that, we do have the instances where they assume that we are talking to them because we have the pretty face. One donor said to me one time that they send you over here to get the money from me because you're pretty. And then we also have to deal with the sexual harassment parts of it, or the questions of, oh, you're not married. Why not? What's wrong with you? And it's just, I'm just living my best life. So it's not an issue, but in those spaces, I feel very thankful that when I was at Duke University and being here at Lamar University, I had supervisors that had my back. More specifically, there was a situation where I was speaking to a donor and he said something very inappropriate to me. And I immediately went back, and I just want to give kudos to Jack White at Duke, because he immediately asked me, what donor was it? What is his phone number? I'm going to call him right now. And he adjusted the situation to make sure that it never happened again. And same here at Lamar, I had what I call him a bully who was picking on me every chance that he got. And I spoke to Marco about it, and he immediately said, we are not going to tolerate this, and I will have that talk with him, because before he continues to disrespect my staff, he can keep his money in his pocket. And those were two situations where I was just very thankful for the people that had my back, and they let it be known, and they were not afraid to say it up front and address the problem head on. So
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And I appreciate those two individuals having your back, because it's not easy. And I shouldn't say it's not easy. It doesn't always happen, I should say. That when there's money at stake, when we're talking big dollars, that people stand up for what their core values are. or what they believe in or what's right versus taking the money and turning the other cheek. And we're going to talk a little bit about accountability here in a second, but we've got some questions piled up in the Q&A. So I want to get to a couple of them, and I got a couple of them that may fit into some topics we're going to handle a little later on. But one I've got is I'm at a top D3 institution, and I'm going to brief it a little bit. We're trying to recruit more Black alumni and donors to our capital campaign committees and board of advisors with an eye on creating tangible leadership networking and mentoring opportunities to help build for future success. Can you share any insights to successfully accomplish these objectives or common mistakes to try to avoid? So the staff, young Black men and women who want to break in the industry, how can they recruit more Black alumni and donors with an eye on leadership, networking, and mentoring? Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
So I'll try and take a stab at it. So essentially, what you're trying to are they saying that they're trying to recruit people to essentially to be donors in terms of that's the question, or are they talking about from a work standpoint?
Yeah, it appears to be two-pronged. How can they create opportunities for young staff members of color, but also how can they recruit more Black alumni to be a part of their capital campaign committees?
Gotcha. So the Black alumni, I'll start with the Black alumni piece, right? Because that's where it starts, right? Like people have to see us in those roles before they can really kind of envision us kind of being in that leadership opportunity. So I at the end of the day, I just like at Washington State, we're real big on creating opportunities and touch points, right? So may it be at an event, how are you following up, right? Are you just inviting people to your event? Or are you following up with folks to say, hey, this person I've never met before, never seen before, let's have a conversation with them. They said that they raised their hand by attending this event. Let's follow up and see what they're about, right? Learn a little bit more about their background. And so I just say, just be intentional with the people that are around your program. I think Jeannie Smith said this. Your next big donor is going to be each state, and so and that happens and that applies to your events as well. So I think just being intentional about the prospecting that you're doing. And just finding some folks and being okay with, hey, if they're not perfect, do they have the potential to be great, right? And are you willing? Are you in real leadership? Do you have the patience to cultivate that talent, right? It's no different than a student or a student athlete. So I think from a donor perspective, you gotta find them and kind of educate them up. In terms of for young folks, oftentimes a lot of people. They act like if they're not as polished, they don't want to kind of invest the time. I think it's the same thing. I think we got to have those conversations. I think on the floor leadership is great. We need to be, out at practices, out at events, meeting our student athletes. It's amazing what they'll share with you and their aspirations, kind of when they're on campus. And I think once you start having those conversations, you'll be able to identify some opportunities with them in the department. So I think you just got to be real intentional about looking for talent. Like it's not always going to find you. And so I think that's one of our talents to be able to find folks. I think as it relates to trying to find new people that want to be in leadership positions, we just got to be intentional about finding them.
Appreciate that. One other, and then we'll hop back on to kind of our scheduled questions. How can Black administrators and athletics not in the donor space help Blacks in the development space? And I'll take a stab at that first. I think one, and Kevin brought this up, just being a ear and a resource to listen and learn. Just because you don't work in development, that means you can't have a relationship with those co-workers. Let them know your door is open, you're willing to talk through things. Because we all know, we talk a lot about the donor space on this call, but if you're talking more so outside the donor space, just being that ear to lean on, or that shoulder to lean on, letting them know you're there for them, helping them navigate office politics and some of those type of things, or just making the transition easier when they move to a location. Anybody got any other insight you want to add if you don't work in development, how you're helping those colleagues? Or maybe some examples people have done for you.
I agree. I have many women in both, as professional contacts that I reach out to both in athletics and just in higher ed in general. And it's just always nice to have a sounding board that are in the industry and they can talk about their experiences in the industry and then outside, because it just gives you a different perspective of what to look at and, or what to do, or just to listen.
Absolutely. So let's hop back on. We talked a little bit beforehand about allyship. I want to switch gears, talk accountability. And this was a lively discussion that we had within our group, because on one hand, when you've got major prospects that you're pursuing or going after, there's a great value to the institution and ability to make our student athlete experiences better. On the flip side, how much is enough? How much do you tolerate, especially when some of our departments and others are making stands, and you've got people making comments or being maybe more emboldened to express their displeasure? How's enough? So Kevin, I want to start with you. Some of our fans, our alums, are outspoken on social media. And sometimes they say things that are downright offensive. You know this person, you've had great conversations with them, and you read what they put in the comment section, you're like, who is this? You know, how do you move beyond that? How do you deal with that individual moving forward?
Well, I will start by saying the first time is more than enough, right? Period. When a donor's comments or actions compromise who you are as a person or professionally, and leadership minimizes the situation or shows no remorse or sensitivity to your experience and does nothing to kind of to disassociate with those individuals, as my uncle sister will say, TTG, it's time to go. And so, you know, I look at the timeliness and authenticity in leadership. If they don't address it quickly, just like they, just like leadership did in these particular instances, and with authenticity, not just trying to cover their own selves, I think that's how it should be addressed. And to be honest with you, Bryan, disassociation, period. When it happens, anything less basically sends the message that their money means more than how they treat Black employees, Black student athletes, and Black members of the community. In our industry right now, in my opinion, is too reactionary. Right? We always talk about not reinventing the wheel, but we can refine it. You know, we can make it more efficient. We can make it better. We can take a stance that we can't, that we should never take a stance that we can't do something better. If we do, we're destined for stagnation and failure. And so I just think there's no place for it. And at the end of the day, the minute a person shows you who they are, you need to believe them. And that's no different for our donors. So we just need to be aligned and really take a stance and say, we're not going to deal with those individuals here.
Absolutely. And let me flip that to the rest of our panelists. I mean, when these kind of things happen, whether it be to your face or in comment sections or something they post on social media or something along those lines, and we're talking about things of the serious variety. I mean, things that truly, to Kevin's point, people are telling about themselves. What are you looking for from your department's leadership? What are you hoping they would do in those moments? Alvin, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. For me, I look for my department's leadership to always put the employees first. And I think respect is the key term to use there. I think if employees and people on staff feel disrespected by a donor, whether that's comments they made over social media or in person, or if he or she hasn't put in an uncomfortable environment, then the situation really just needs to be addressed. And I think, with us working in sports, I think people always, we use this cliche term when we talk about student athletes of, run through that brick wall, that student athlete to run through the brick wall for their coach. I think it correlates to staff. I mean, I think us as people on staff will be willing to run through that brick wall if I know that my boss or my supervisors and people around our department have my back.
Absolutely. T, Laura, anything to add?
I think leadership starts at the top. And so, for instance, with UConn, after everything happened with George Floyd, there was immediately a call to action. There was a D&I committee implemented immediately. We were able to get programs and different panel discussions going. Even our AD, David Benedict, and our basketball head coaches, they participated in the Coaches Roadshow wearing the Black Lives Matter t-shirts. And so it was just really known that we're not going to tolerate racism or anyone feeling uncomfortable, due to racism.
Absolutely.
I would say with leadership, I look for openness, I look for the vulnerability, and I look for the acceptance of facing whatever the issue is head on. One of the things I love most about Marco is our relationship is both me working under him, but also a friendship. So if there is a problem or if there's something I don't understand or he doesn't understand, there is a time and a place and a space where we can have honest communication with each other and really just tell each other what it is laid out with no sugaring on top of it. And with him and the senior staff, there's other members that I know that I can run and talk to about different scenarios. So as long as we can talk about the problem head on and then figure out the solution on how to fix it, that says volumes to me of being able to address it head on.
Absolutely. I think you hit on something big there, that vulnerability. And sometimes it's just, I don't understand, help me understand, can be the start of a conversation. You don't have to come to the table with all the answers. But Lauren, to your earlier point, silence is not the answer. I guarantee you that. So just being quiet about it, hoping to go away, that can't happen. So even if the start of the conversation is, I have no idea what to do right now, let's talk about it. That's enough to at least get the conversation, showing you got that vulnerability, but showing you're all in it together, to Alvin's point, to now I want to run through a brick wall. We got one of the questions in the chat asking, can you give some examples of some microaggressions you faced in the donor space? And the premise behind the question is, oftentimes people don't know they're committing microaggression when they maybe are. So whoever wants to take that one.
So for me, it was definitely timeliness. So, you know, I attribute this to the fact that I'm Caribbean. Like me and time, like we just, we're on a different page sometimes. And so I remember one time I was running late for a meeting, and I came up to for a donor meeting, and it wasn't the first time. So, you know, and in all previous meetings, I was early and ready to go. But just on that particular day, it was a hot day in Florida. I was running behind, and he was like, "Man, you and your people are always late." I was like, kind of taken aback, like, you know, okay, you know, I hear you, but you know, every single meeting, you know, we had numerous meetings. He's been late countless times. And I would just, you know, I would sit back and just say, hey, you know, I'm on your time, it's okay. But the one time, and I wasn't even 2-3 minutes late. He had nothing to do, but he just felt to make that joke. And so for him to kind of associate, you know, me being Black with me always being late, wasn't cool. And so, and I let him know that, you know, right there on the spot. And I think that's one of the reasons why I have great relationships with my donors. I don't try to dance. I don't try to be somebody I'm not. And I keep it 1,000 with people through and through. If something offends me, I let them know in a professional manner, and I address it head on. And I've been very, very fortunate to have leadership, you know, throughout my entire career. That's always had my back and never asked me to sacrifice who I am as a person. So, so yeah, that's my one little experience.
Absolutely. And a lot of what we're talking about accountability. And how do you hold somebody accountable that is not an employee of the university? You don't have quote unquote control over them. How do you hold them accountable? So aside from your boss making that phone call or discontinuation of the relationship, what are some other steps that we can take? I know in some of our prep calls we talked about, I believe it was Grant brought up the idea of in your donor notes, they actually, when they have some of these incidents, they make note of it and then make note of how bad it was. And then it could go anywhere from no longer having those conversations to at least having a conversation with that person. But I know some bosses will just say, hey, Alvin's on this donor, let's move Alvin off because that donor requested that quote unquote boy did not come back at him and put somebody on it just to make sure we get that money again. Can we talk about some of those steps and then the accountability? D, you want to lead us off?
To hold people accountable, I've started asking questions. So when someone says something inappropriate to me, so for example, I've had a donor use the N-word to me very casually multiple times in his sentences. And I simply asked him, what made you think it was okay for you to use that word for me? Silence, paused. Oh, well, stuttering. Why do you think that it's okay for you to speak to me in this manner? If somebody says something like one time they describe me as, oh, that was a little Black girl. I'm not a girl. Why did you feel like it was okay to acknowledge my color first and then call me a girl? it makes them uncomfortable. It makes them have to reflect on what they said and why they said it and what it means, while also letting them know I said something very offensive. Uncomfortability is growth. And you mentioned that earlier. If you're uncomfortable with a question that I just asked you, then you're learning something in that lesson. And lately, that has been the best way I have been able to hold people accountable for their actions, by asking them why they did it and why they felt like it was okay.
Absolutely. And I really like that. I mean, I think these are relationships we're talking about, right? No different sometimes in maybe your spouse. We all know whether it be a spouse or a friend or whoever, if something happens and you let it linger and nobody says anything, it doesn't get better magically. It just lingers in the background. It always affects those conversations moving forward. Sometimes if you just call it out in the open, and D, I really like your approach, just asking questions. Okay, walk me through mentally how you felt like it was okay to say that word right now. Either they meant to do it and it lets them know, hey, this isn't the place for it, don't do that again, or they didn't know they were basically doing something inappropriate and now it shines light on it. Wow, that was inappropriate. I can see how that can make her uncomfortable. But one or two ways is it's gonna get better, or you get to a point where you know you need to discontinue the relationship. But I really like that approach of asking those questions. Alvin, you got any thoughts on that, on kind of holding those donors accountable?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with D, and that's kind of took the words out of my mouth about, asking that question and make it, and spinning it back on them to get the, to make them understand that, no, what you just said and your approach is not cool. I bragged on Tim earlier, but I'll brag on him again. I had a situation right before COVID hit with the donor that didn't like the way they were invited to a suite at a conference tournament. And, right off the bat, it happened. It kind of caught me by surprise because I hadn't, experienced really anything here since I kind of been at Purdue. But immediately there was no, Tim didn't come to me and say, hey, what happened? And let's investigate. Let's look into it. Was spot on. I said what happened. I explained my, the experience that I had. And he was immediately, no more. That person is not invited anymore. Access, removing access from donors when they do things like that, to me is the number one way to fix those types of things, because it immediately lets the donor know that not only does Alvin feel a certain type of way, but the people around him feel a certain type of way about what I just did.
Absolutely. I think, and I wanted to make sure we tackle this accountability section hard, because I think right now, with the last couple of months and what's happened, I think every campus in America is putting out a diversity statement. They're forming committees. They're saying they're going to do a lot of work. But when these instances happen and you turn a blind eye, or you're silent, or you don't discontinue, you're sending a message to your Black student athletes and your Black staff pretty explicitly. That this dollar is worth more than how you feel were our core values at the moment. And I think that as we talk about recruiting staff and further diversifying the industry, those two just can't go hand in hand. Either department's got to say, hey, we're okay with this kind of action, and you got a stomach if you're going to work here. If we all know that on the front end, fine, we can make our decisions about where we're employed. But if you say you're about this work, diversity, equity, inclusion, and you're committed to it, and you can't go hand in hand with turning the blind eye when people behave in a way that doesn't align with that institution's espoused core values. So I think that's a really important topic for us. You're in this age right now, and I just hit on a little bit of it, where a lot of our departments are putting out statements, they're putting out graphics. We at WSU and a number of Pac-12 schools put out a clenched fist with the words Black Lives Matter on our colored background that matched our university colors on our social media platforms. We did it for Juneteenth. And we did it again here recently after all that's been going on around the nation. And we got a lot of feedback from a lot of individuals. I got everything from DMs, not that it came from my account, but as they just assumed that I was behind it, I guess. And I got a lot of DMs from a lot of people, either, hey, I'm really proud of my university, or how dare you align yourself with this organization or this cause that's doing X, Y, and Z. I think I try to stay away from comments, but going into our Facebook comments and seeing some of those type of things was troubling. And I share that not to shame our institution, because I truly believe it's every institution across America. As I look at different statements and graphics, I see the same trend and the same items, the same emails in the inbox. So as you guys, or as you all navigate these circumstances and postings of your social media accounts or your department does, how do you think about those in terms of how they affect your donor interactions? I mean, when they come up in conversation, how do you handle them? I'll open that to the group.
So for me, when it comes up in conversation, I am very honest with our donor base or anybody that I speak with. I will let them spout their opinions, and you are fine to say whatever you want to say until it strikes a deep chord with me. And then I will say, I do not agree with you. We should talk about something else. Let's lead the conversation in a different direction because we are not going to see eye to eye on this case. And I haven't had any scenarios where they were like, no, but I want to tell you or anything. So far, all of my donors have respected what I said. They accepted my wishes, and we moved on from that space. If it is in an email, most of those emails, they don't know exactly who is going to read them. If I come across them, I don't respond to them. You are not going to steal my energy or my joy. So you can spit whatever you want to say, and that email is going to go in the trash and keep on going. But our university and our athletic department, we put out our statements, and the leadership has also said, Black Lives Matter, and they understand. And I am now heading our diversity and inclusion committee within athletics. And actually today, our women's basketball team is leading a peaceful march on campus. It is starting right now. And I'm having my Black on to support them because they asked for everyone to wear Black. So I feel really good that our department is doing what we can to support our student athletes, as well as letting the employees have a voice and say, this is not okay, and we're not going to talk about this anymore.
Any other thoughts? So I want to switch gears to wrap this thing up. And this is, I think, a segue from the last session that actually I hosted regarding being a minority in the development space to now talking about the donor space. And I'm a firm believer that when you can see it, it greatly improves your chances of achieving it. If I see a Black person in the AD chair or another position I aspire to achieve, there's something about being able to envision yourself in that role too that's helpful as you plot a line and face some of the diversity that we're all talking about today. So given the low numbers of African Americans in the development field and in the AD chair, I mean, who is it that you look for to model your behaviors after, or look to as kind of the role models as you navigate this donor space, given the challenges we've discussed? Alvin, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, man. Man, I kind of had a long list, but I'm gonna keep it brief. I'm not gonna preach today, but the first person that comes to mind when you ask this question is Haven Fields over at Ball State, who's the deputy AD at Ball State, and Haven comes to mind because of his conviction. He stands behind. He's the person actions speak louder than words. That holds true for Haven, and I like to model myself after him because of that. Another person I would like to mention is Jennifer Lynn Williams at Alabama State, because of her versatility and the confidence that she always exudes. So that always goes a long way with me. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say Jay Anderson at UAB. Jay's not in the chair at UAB, but I have a high level of respect for him, and I look to him as a role model because Jay gave me a chance. I was a baseball coach trying to break back into the business. Nobody would give me opportunity, but Jay did. And really, I've always been a passionate guy, known for high level of passion and energy. But Jay really taught me how to channel my passion and energy into becoming a good fundraiser.
Absolutely.
I think for me, again, I have many strong women role models. Hi, Mom. But Adrienne Sweeney, who's our Chief Operating Officer, while she's not a direct fundraiser in development, she does interact with donors, and she's come up, in the ranks of the collegiate athletic field to a very prominent position. And even so much, my first year at NAADD, she took me around, she introduced me to multiple Black women in higher ed athletics, such as Jennifer Williams at Alabama State. And I just remember sitting at the table surrounded by at least 20 intelligent Black women, all in high ranking positions in the field. And I was just in awe. It was really just, excuse me, before that, I had only seen white men in that space. So to see that, I was, man.
Absolutely. Dick?
Jennifer Williams. She is just awesome. I met her at NAADD one year, and she was just powerful, and she walks into a room and she commands it. So she is high on my list. And some of the people that influence me, not all of them are in development. I mean, my mentor, my big sister, Naisha Campbell, she brought me into development. She's no longer in college athletics, but I still look to her and talk to her on a regular basis. Gerald Harrison, who is the AD in Austin P, still talk to him regularly and ask for his help all the time. Rob Knox, who is at UNCG, he works in communications. He does not do development at all, and he just has this way to encourage you, to make you think that you can conquer the world. Joe Manhertz at Duke, he keeps it real with me all the time. If I want somebody to tell me the honest truth with no filter, I know that I can call him. I mentioned Jack previously, and he has such a soft tone, but he is so respectful and he gets it done, and he just knows how to communicate so effectively. And this is just a few names of people who have impacted my life and helped me grow and just helped me be a better person as well as a fundraiser.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been in the business for a while and just been really fortunate to call legit titans in our industry friends. And so, you know, I echo Haven, definitely close to him, and look to him as an example of how to move in this industry. My fellow ACC sister, Jennifer Williams, as well. You can see the impact that she's had on all of us, but also, and Joe Manhertz as well. But I've also got my guy, Chris McFarland at Pitt, who essentially is the only African-American running a development shop in the ACC right now. And that says a lot about, you know, his work and everything that he's done throughout his career. My guy, Alice Gary, you know, he's now the AD at Western Carolina. Anthony Henderson, who's at William & Mary, lean on him tremendously as well. And Willie Jude, who's no longer in athletics. He's the reason why I got into the business on this side in the first place. So definitely want to give kudos to him as well. And the reason why, you know, I look to those individuals specifically, and I definitely wanted to take the time to also acknowledge the people on this panel as well, because I engage you and I admire you as well. So I want to let you know that also. You know, and the reason I look to them is because they thrive in all different types of fundraising environments. And also my guy, Tim Duncan, as well. Just, you know, when I started out as HBCU, a lot of people, you know, tell you that, you know, you're going to be there all the time. And I've got colleagues who said, hey, you know, being at HBCU and fundraising is a place of need. We need to go where we're needed. And, you know, Keith McCooney, he's another one that was at A&T, and he's at FAM now. You know, another great mentor. And I just admire the way that they've never really they've always they're always bloom when they're planted, and they never see where they are as a downside. They always see it as the mission. They're not concerned about the logos. That's what I love about Joe. He never wears any Duke apparel. He literally is just in a golf shirt and some slacks, and it's like, hey, this is what I'm wearing. And so, and again, I pride myself on knowing these people, and those are some of the folks that, you know, I look to every day to try and get better, to bounce off of, to say, hey, man, am I tripping about this, or, you know, how can I be better? And you know, I look forward to getting to know Lauren better and getting to know Dee better, and getting to know Alvin's nerves, and also, you know, and just kind of continue growing that network. So, you know, I tell anybody, reach out to me. I love to talk.
And I really, really appreciate you guys sharing specific names for them, because I asked that question for two purposes. One, to properly thank those people for the work they're doing, even sometimes they don't realize they're doing the work. But two, to put those people on people's radar if they weren't on people's radar. These are people that are killing it in the industry. And so this conversation of I can't find a certain type of talent in certain type of pools, those are the people. And if they're not willing to up and move right now, they know those people because they surround themselves with other great people that can help you fill some of these opportunities as we try to diversify this industry. So I appreciate those responses. Last question, and we'll wrap up some of the QA and go from there. I think we all know fundraising is a necessary skill set for an AD. And we talked about a lot of the challenges you face in the donor space and how it may be challenging to navigate. Do you feel like those two go hand in hand? Our low numbers of development professionals of color and a low number of Black ADs in the country. Do you feel like those two go hand in hand, and why? D, I'll start with you.
I've been thinking about this question since I read that it was going to be one of our questions and trying to really decide how I feel about it. And ultimately, I don't think that the challenges that we face directly relates to why we have so little African Americans sitting in those seats or in our industry completely. I do think some of our challenges does turn us off of it, but I think ultimately we don't have a lot of people in those seats because our people are not getting the opportunity and the first step in the door to even know the challenges that we currently face. They're not getting the introductory positions, or they're getting looked over for the higher positions. And if you're not getting that chance, how can you make it to the top seat? How can you make it to the next level? So for me, it's we have our challenges, and as Black people, we fight every day. We live this life. So one challenge thrown at us is not going to stop us from ultimate goal if that's what we want to do. But we have to get the chance to do it. We have to get the opportunity. And if you give us a chance, we'll blow it out the water. We'll make it happen.
Absolutely. Kev, Alvin?
Yeah, I definitely think that race plays a huge role in us not getting opportunities in terms of just being a barrier. Just the fear. Fear is real, and a lot of people won't speak on it. They won't admit it, but it's a major barrier. Thinking will we, connect with our donor group? Will we be able to? Are we polished enough to speak to certain constituencies? And I think to overcome that is just going to take champions. Kevin Anderson was the first guy when he was in Maryland, was the first person to even use that phrase or that term, that I heard. I know there's research. My guy, Dr. Ed Scott at Morgan State, he went into this in his research, but we need champions. And at the end of the day, we have to be okay stepping up for the folks in our business and speaking up. I speak highly of Alvin all the time whenever somebody's asking me just about development officers in the industry, period, not just Black ones. Bryan, if it wasn't for Bryan speaking up to Pat, I wouldn't be at Washington State. And so we need those champions to be able to speak up in any space. And it's a tremendous help to us in our business. So I think that's how we overcome it.
So, Alvin?
Like that. Y'all both preaching. I like it. But yeah, man, bottom line, we have work to do. We do have work to do. I do feel like the two are connected, and I feel that institutions, a lot of them are afraid of minority hires, especially, if the minority doesn't have that degree from a prestigious university, or if they're not recognized as a prestigious former student athlete somewhere, because they are afraid of how the donors will accept that individual. And I think that plays a huge role in hiring. I think we changed that with platforms like this one and shedding a light on talented individuals that don't come from ideal backgrounds, and advocating those champions, advocating for more minorities to get into supervisory roles to prove their leadership skills.
Absolutely. I think when you start off, we got work to do. I want to say amen, because we do have work to do, and I remain hopeful for the future given today's conversations. Looking through the chat, the Q&A, and I think we've knocked off some of the questions, but one came in, caught my eye especially. They're asking, do you all feel comfortable leading and having this conversation for the world to hear right now? And this one hit me, I think, especially given the events of the last couple of months. I think it's inspired many of us to things we may say to each other, but not maybe publicly as much. And now you feel a little bit more empowered to speak up. I'm not sure comfortable is the right word, but I'd love to hear from the panel. Lauren, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Comfortable, yes and no. It does open up feelings, raw emotions that, again, I think someone mentioned that you tried to put away in a little box. I think I would feel better if I knew it was reaching the right people, meaning the people that need to hear it, that don't believe that Black Lives Matter or have some other type of, view, but would be open to hearing.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah, to Lauren's point, I'm comfortable having a conversation. I actually embrace it and see it as an opportunity to educate. And so definitely, looking forward to having it in any platform. And, again, want to appreciate, NAADD for giving us this platform today to even have this conversation.
I mean, the reason why I got so excited, do you want to say something?
I was just going to say that I am comfortable. And to the second part of her question, do I constantly feel vulnerable? I don't feel vulnerable. I feel exhausted. It's a lot of mental work and emotional draining to constantly explain to people why my life matters, why I am important, why you should care about me and my wants and my needs and what it is like to be Black in America. So am I open to it? Yes, because you have to learn and you have to hear it from somewhere. And hopefully my experiences will touch your heart and change the way you look at life. And do I feel vulnerable? No, I'm tired. I am exhausted. And that's really what I go for it.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, for me personally, am I comfortable with it? No, I'm not. I'll just be flat out honest. I hate that we even have to have these conversations. I realize they're important, but I hate that I'm in a position that I have to have, and I have to re-traumatize myself to talk about my experiences or have these conversations with you guys, but it's necessary. And we started off talking about comfort and growth. They don't coexist. We've all got to be uncomfortable. That means me having to talk about these experiences, or moderator panel talking about these experiences. That means the next Bryan Blair that comes through the industry is better off than I'm willing to do that. I think we all are, because we want to see change, and we sense that this moment may be right for change when it hadn't happened before. And I remain hopeful that this will be the moment that in many ways is different. So I think the final question, we led off talking about your why. You introduced yourself and you said, hey, here's my why, here's my purpose. If you had to give one takeaway to the audience of something that, given our conversation, that would move your why forward, what would it be and why? So Kevin, you want to start us off?
Yeah, definitely. Just really quickly, I think, we belong in this industry, right? In leadership roles on the external side, we belong here. We earned the right to have them. Our presence sends the message to other young Black men and women that we can thrive when given the opportunity. And I just, encourage everybody to continue to fight through the obstacles, because you never know when you may spark the interest in the next Bernard Muir, the next Dr. Englewick McCree, or the next Pat Chun. There are student athletes. They're the people that are kind of sitting down and saying, well, who's in those roles? And they're looking to you to be that person. So I definitely think that kind of pushed my why forward today. And hopefully everybody kind of took that away to say, hey, me being in this space can influence the next person.
Absolutely. D?
Echoing what Kevin said, influence. If talking today is revisiting our trauma, if having this open dialogue influences you to give that opportunity to the next person, the next young woman, the next Black man, then I feel like I've done my part. I've helped open that door, and it is just a wonderful feeling. Even when I have conversations with my mentee, Sheila, and I'm helping her try to break through and listening to her accomplishments, it's great. She is part of my life.
Lauren?
Black Lives Matter. It's not just an organization. It's not a fad. It's not a saying. We are in every space, and we deserve to be every space. Black Lives Matter, period.
Appreciate that. Alvin, bring us home, man.
Man, I like the word influence that they use, that Dee and Kevin used from the beginning. It's bigger than just us. On this panel, it's big. So for me, expounding on my why, it's bigger than me. Especially the people that's coming behind me. I do it for the people who are constantly told no, because I've been in that situation where I've been constantly told no and didn't understand why. To this day, still don't understand why. But that's neither here or there. But I do it for those people who are constantly told no.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we're coming up on time, and I appreciate all of you spending time and opening yourselves to this conversation. John Lewis, civil rights pioneer, just passed away, but he's got a quote that I've just really latched onto. I keep revisiting. It says, "You are the light. You are a light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Study the path of others to make your way easier and more abundant." That to me is everything. That to me is everything. I don't need to, and none of us need to diminish who we are to get where we're going, but just know by doing what you're doing, you're opening paths for others. So I appreciate all our panelists. I appreciate the audience for taking time to tune in. I appreciate NAADD and NAADD for helping us get it set up. So with that, I'll flip it to Grant to close us out.
Thanks, Brian, and to Dee, Alvin, Kevin, Lauren, and definitely our main man, Bryan, today. So thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for being open. Thanks for helping us learn today. You made not only your institutions, but the NAADD community incredibly proud. So I really appreciate it. A shout out to Jason and DeAna from NAADD for helping put this together. Appreciate all their help. So what's next? We got session 3 coming up in 2 weeks, September 24th on a Thursday. It's the student athlete journey through collegiate racism, the transition to being an engaged alum. So we've heard from the professionals, and now we're going to hear from 4 student athletes and their perspective, and it's going to be really good content. So I hope you all will consider joining us in 2 weeks. Thanks again. Hope to see you all soon. Appreciate your time.